thing is Santa. But as for me and Grandpa, we believe.
It is December 20th, 2021. Welcome to The Daily Rob. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey, and we are on all major podcast platforms. Now, without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Rob Smith.
Hello, Stu. How are you, and how was your weekend?
It's been a busy weekend. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
What damsels did you woo this weekend, Stu?
Absolutely zero. I have a friend in town from Colorado, high school bud, so it's been the fellowship of the bro all weekend.
Oh, good. Well, that sounds like fun. Good thing to do.
He took some pictures with some of my guns and sent them to his very liberal friends in Colorado. And they were shocked.
Really?
Yes.
You know, you get to outside of Denver, and Colorado is a pretty normal place.
Oh, yeah, all over the place. But
yeah, I hear if you go downtown, everybody's high, and there are a bunch of millennials sleeping in parks and disheveled clothes. And it's kind of a refuge for the pot smoking people who really don't do much.
They definitely have some tent city aspects in Denver. I've seen that firsthand.
Yeah. So, Stu, I was going to talk about the way that the MSM has crashed and burned this year. Politico's viewership is down 48%. Washington Post page views are down 28%. The New York Times page views are down 15%. And this is already on just kind of the historical lows to begin with. And the digital subscribers to the Washington Post are down 300,000. I don't know why, Stu, when you log on to some of these places, you see an article, New York Times, Washington Post, and then they want you to subscribe to read their article. And I always say, I'm not subscribing. What are you kidding me? From a business practice, I'm not so sure that's a good idea. They ought to, seems to me, and of course, I'm not looking at their numbers, but being able to rely off of ad revenue like most folks do would seem to be the ticket to get more viewership. But anyway, those are just my thoughts. Last night, I didn't watch it because I haven't watched it in years because it's turned into a commie pinko show. But apparently Saturday Night Live did not have a live audience, and they had a really skipped down version of their show with only, I think reports that they were only going to have like two people on stage at one time because of the Omicron virus. And Stu, everybody there is vaccinated.
I'm not sure that this is a good idea.
Not a good idea? Why? Friendship is the best idea.
In fact, I think Fred Friendship should go to the front of the line.
No, he shouldn't. No.
Yes, I should.
To the front of the line, Fred.
F, 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 F.
And Stu, I think it's really kind of funny how these liberal institutions, there's Cornell, there's Middlebury. I read today where VCU is not going to have its basketball game. Cornell, Princeton, and Middlebury have gone to online classes. 99% of everybody at these institutions is vaccinated, and they've taken every precaution in the world. But guess what? The virus still spreads. Imagine that. Stu, the National Fraternal Order of Police has lambasted the NFL because of their donations to not only defund the police, but abolish the police organizations. Some of the places they contribute to are the Vera Institute for Justice, the Oregon Justice Resource Center, and the Community Justice Exchange. Stu, I think we ought to do a podcast at some point about a lot of these big corporations that gave so much money to Black Lives Matter, probably some to Antifa, and expose them, and perhaps also show where some of this money has gone. We know the leader of Black Lives Matters bought herself 4 or 5 houses. I'm sure she hasn't paid any taxes on the money she got, and I'm sure the IRS won't prosecute her. Stu, remember when the Brits ruled half the world? The sun never set on the British Empire. When Wellington defeated Napoleon in 1815 at the Battle of Waterloo, how the Brits had that stiff upper lip and courage during the Blitz during World War II. Well, Stu, what has happened to them? They have turned into a pussy nation. Sorry, I like the Brits. They're my second favorite nation out there. The government, it was leaked today, though they haven't announced this, is thinking about going on another quasi lockdown. They're going to tell you that you can only have 6 people in your house over Christmas. They're going to keep bars and pubs open, but only outdoor seatings. Social gatherings, a funeral or a wedding, you can only have 15 people. Stu, as far as I know, there's only been one attributed death to Omicron, and that was in England. And what I also think is true, Stu, is you can't die from Omicron. The person who was attributed it to have died had to have had a bunch of other stuff, because the symptoms just do not lead to death. Hyperhysteria and Orwellian control. And I hate to see the Brits go down this way, but many other what I would call Commonwealth nations, Canada's gone nuts, Australia's gone nuts. I don't know how that can be in a Commonwealth nation which is derived from English law, which developed individual rights. Computer models, again, in England, you've got this guy, Neil Ferguson. You remember him? He's an academic, and he's probably the one who's most responsible for lockdowns in the world. Early on, he said there were going to be massive deaths unless we lock things down. And what does he do, Stu? He violates his own lockdown to sneak over across town to his married girlfriend's house so he can boink her. It just shows you, again, the hypocrisy and just kind of the mechanism of control that these folks want. It's like a mad scientist. They want control over everybody. What do you think about it, Stu?
Yeah, it's something else. I just looked up the weather in London. It's 40 degrees. That's pretty much the high. The low gets down into below freezing, and yet they want people to eat outside. Like it's going to be good to be exposed to all that cold weather. And so in response to the notion that we're going to go under lockdown again for the English, UK's Brexit minister, David Frost, has resigned, which is just another blow to Boris Johnson. And so Frost said, I hope we will move as fast as possible to where we need to get to, a lightly regulated, low-tax, entrepreneurial economy at the cutting edge of modern science and economic change. And so it's from what he says, it doesn't sound like it's COVID related, but everything behind the scenes is this was triggered by Johnson's tougher COVID-19 restrictions.
Well, lightly regulated, you know what he's talking about there.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I might have to, if I was a Brit, I'd vote for the guy. I'm just so disappointed in Boris Johnson. And it shows you this tendency for people, once they get into power, is to become power hungry. It's sad. As you can see, Stu, I'm in Dallas. There's a Trump rally tonight. Last night there was one in Houston, and there were over 19,000 people there. And I just thought about contrasting that when Biden campaigned with Terry McAuliffe. He goes across the Potomac to Arlington, probably the bluest blue in the country, with people who have plenty of money. Nobody works after 4 o'clock. This was kind of a 6 o'clock kind of of rally, and he attracted about 6 people. Pretty telling, Stu. And I think this gets back to the voter fraud issue as well, but that's another story for another time. Anyway, Stu, an issue in the news over the weekend is the fentanyl crisis. When Donald Trump ran for president, he brought this up all the time. The number one cause of deaths for people between 18 and 45 years old is fentanyl. And that's just one kind of drug. It's 4 times what the published COVID death rate is. But let's not forget, the COVID death rate is hyperinflated. The CDC has already stated that the amount of people, that the percentage of people in the United States who die solely of COVID is about 5.3%. And the ones who die between 18 and 45 obviously would be a lot less than that. Also, there are 100,000 deaths a year from drug overdoses. And Stu, as you know, I'm a kind of anti-alcohol and drug guy. And when you see these numbers, 100,000 drug overdoses a year, you're only seeing a fraction of the damage that drugs and alcohol cause. A fraction. They ruin people's lives at many multiples higher than they kill people. Fentanyl kills one person, poisons one person every 8.7 minutes, and 175 people a day. That ends up being about 64,000 a year. Deaths have doubled since 2019 on a yearly basis, and they're up 50% this year over last year. It's a crisis, Stu, and we're not paying any attention to it. And as one who is pretty anti substance abuse, I'm somewhat of a libertarian as well. I know we can't control everything, but when the government enables these things, like in Virginia and these other states, things were fine the way they were. But now we have to say, oh, you can buy pot anytime you want. You can have these mixed drinks in 7-Eleven stores. You open up the borders and you allow this stuff to flow into the country. You're really making things worse. The government is never going to be able to stop people from bad behavior, but what they ought not to do is be in the business of promoting vice. And that's what I got to say, Stu. And a lot of this has to do with open borders, which, by the way, is reported over the weekend that Texas is building the border wall.
Yeah, I saw that Wheels was doing that. So good on him for trying to get something done.
Welcome.
And to talk about the fentanyl real quick, you had a few very famous comedians in LA. They were at a party. They thought they were going to do a bunch of cocaine. They go to do the cocaine. Guess what? It's been caught with fentanyl. 2 of them end up dead. 1 of them's in the hospital in critical condition. You know, the same thing goes for all kinds of other drugs where people think they're taking acid or pills, and it ends up being cut with fentanyl because fentanyl has a myriad of side effects it does to you. And so you can just make these fake drugs and then just cut them with fentanyl, save money. People buy them. It's the black market. It's already illegal. So
who were the 2 guys, the 2 comedians? Would I know of them?
No, they're LA liberal comedians. Kate Quigley is one of them. So she survived, but the other people died. And so
the other thing, Stu, is just not fentanyl in that I was at a cocktail party the other night and I saw a guy who I know whose child has been to rehab. And, I offered to, talk to him about it over coffee one day. And I think we are, because as you know, I've had some family members go through this type of thing. I think I know a thing or two about it. And he mentioned, and I've always heard this, that the marijuana that these kids get off the street is about 20 times stronger than the marijuana my generation smoked. And it's laced with all kinds of chemicals that enhance the addiction. And few people know that.
But you could put fentanyl on it and then claim it's THC crystals. So you could be like, this is a very potent weed. Look at those THC crystals. You go and you smoke it, and you're actually smoking fentanyl.
Yeah. Yeah. And these kids have no idea what they are buying, and it gets terribly addictive very, very quickly. And again, Stu, I'll say this. One thing I've learned is it's not the deaths in the drunk driving. People die tragic deaths because of drunk drivers, but the damage that alcohol does to people's lives and wrecking people's lives is 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 times the destruction that just comes from those deaths. People overlook that, and same is true with these drugs. So I'll get off my soapbox, Stu. But like Nancy Reagan, just say no.
Right on.
I love Nancy.
So
I loved Uncle Ryan too.
And so I am going to talk about Joe Manchin. Again, he's in the news again. So he snubbed the White House, and he went on Fox News, and he just plain out said that he, and I quote, "I just can't. I've tried everything humanly possible. I can't get there. This is a no." And this is concerning BBB, Build Back Better. And so he does not see how this is a viable piece of legislation that he can get behind and how he can justify it to the people of West Virginia. And of course, the entire establishment comes out against him and, starts bad-mouthing him and this and that. And the White House is saying that, oh, they're still trying to negotiate with him and this and that. And so you kind of have, the divergence of the narratives. And, it does make the White House look weak. And Manchin is seen as preventing America from being able to build back and get back on their feet. And so it's somewhat funny to me when someone like Psaki says the following: Senator Manchin will have to explain to those families paying $1,000 a month for insulin why they need to keep paying that instead of $35 for that vital medicine. He will have to explain to the nearly 2 million women who could get affordable daycare they need to return to work why he opposes a plan to get them the help they need. Maybe Senator Manchin can explain to the millions of children who have been lifted out of poverty in part due to the child tax credit why he wants to end a program that is helping achieve this milestone. We cannot. And so what I think he should do is, even if it's just for optics, all those things that she criticized, he should find just single pieces of legislation that focus on just those things and put those forward and have them have a lower price tag than the trillion some dollars we need to add on to our already prodigious debt, and even just appear to want to push that forward instead of having an infrastructure deal that has all this pork just completely tacked onto it. And so Anya Presley from Massachusetts, part of this, part of the squad, she's furious at him. To be clear, my lack and deficit of trust was about Senator Manchin. He has continued to move the goalpost. He has never negotiated in good faith, and he is obstructing the president's agenda, 85% of which is still left on the table. And so it's like you always say, the bulldozer has to come out. So, if he's obstructing, let's get that killdozer fired up and just see if we can just delete him from the conversation. So he seems like he's probably on the list to get Trotsky'd in some capacity. But I will say, and I know you have your own thoughts on him, this has been 5 months of them trying to negotiate on this Build Back Better plan. Build Back Better was this kind of, for lack of a better phraseology, globalist catchphrase.
And of course, we also want to work together on building back better from the pandemic, a slogan that I think that Joe has used several times. I think he may have nicked it from us.
Once we shut down the virus and deliver economic relief to workers and businesses, then we can start to build back better than before.
But it is undoubtedly an opportunity for us to work together and build back better.
Build back better.
As the world recovers, we have a chance to reset the clock and build back better than before.
And building back better our economy and society.
We owe it to future generations to build back better and base our recovery on solid foundations.
The second plank in Build Back Better advances racial equity by mobilizing our infrastructure. Together we can fix this. Let's build back better.
Building back better after disasters is also vital to prevent creating new risks. Together, we can build a safer world.
4 sets of priorities can guide the response to Build Back Better.
You know what Donald Trump will do with 4 more years? Blame, bully, and belittle. And you know what Joe Biden will do? Build back better.
And if anyone has probably gone through that bill and looked at it and studied it, I have to say in good faith, he probably has, because everyone else was just willing to sign off on it due to party politics. He seems like he's engaged with it the most. He probably knows it a lot better than all the other senators. And so if he still can't get to this after nearly half a year of stewing it over, you have to just admit it's dead, go back to the whiteboard, and put something out that's better. I mean, it's getting to the point where I'm tired of kind of hearing about it. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting just to see all the talking heads just be super, super mad at him. And, it's okay. It's one of those things where we can talk about inflation if we are talking about passing Build Back Better. So Build Back Better is going to fix inflation, but if we're not talking about Build Back Better, then there is no inflation. So that's another thing they like to say where, if we pass this, then we get to work our way out of inflation. But I mean, it's just.
Well, that is absurd, spending $3.5 trillion. I will give him kudos for standing up to the mob. No question about that. But this Jen Psaki stuff about, you must be against childcare and all this, that's a bunch of socialist, to use a Joe Biden term, malarkey. You can always cherry pick things and say that this is good, but those type of programs are not good. When the government does these things, they don't work. They never work. And guess what, Jen Psaki? People can find ways to take care of their children without the government help. And when you don't have the government help, you have lower taxation, more prosperity, and less regulation. We don't need you. People have been raising kids for millions of years, and we don't need your help. And a lot of these programs, they have slick names like the Child Care Act or whatever they want to call it. But if you dive into those bills, you will see incredible pork and large jets go to various benefactors of the Democratic Party. It's horseshit, and what I'm hoping, I think it's over for sure, but the idea of going back and trying to, pick this government expenditure or this one, I would be against that.
But it's the hypothetical of, if he wants to play the great game, that's what he should do, where he should say, oh, I'm for these things. This is the legislation I'm willing to put forward for it. Y'all can have it.
And they won't do anything, or else they'll try to, and this is what's wrong. And this is maybe the subject of another day, or I might write an article on about it. Constitutionally, we're supposed to pass 13 appropriation bills a year, and they're supposed to be passed at a particular time of the year. I don't know what it is exactly, 9 months before the money has to be spent. We haven't done that in decades, and these continuing resolutions are nothing short of a bank holdup, where they stick a gun to the American taxpayer and says, we need to pass this massive bill that nobody's read, or else we're going to default on our debt and the world's going to implode. If they did their job right, we would never be in that position, and we don't. And historians are going to one day look back and go, what? They had these 2,000-page bills that they passed with incredible deficit spending that nobody even read. I mean, it's the most irresponsible act of modern government. And historians will look back and say, I can't believe they did this.
What I kind of love about getting the news from another country, so this article I'm using comes from the Daily Mail. They say this: he is a no on President Joe Biden's Build Back Better initiative following months of negotiations over the social spending legislation. I thought it was an infrastructure spending legislation.
Well,
but it's clear that, and it's just like Tim Scott.
They forgot about their lies, and we're honest for a second.
And it's just like Tim Scott said, there's 10% of it that's infrastructure, but you can't call it the infrastructure Build Back Better legislation when 90% of it is social spending. So
and it is a ruse.
Yeah.
Where the Democrats in Congress are outright lying to you about what the bill's about and what's in the bill. So why should you vote for anything like that that's based on a lie?
And then also, when it comes to daycare, what religious place of worship doesn't offer a daycare program that's reasonably priced? Every church, every mosque, every synagogue, every little local community center, if you're one of those.
And if you're going to have children, you ought to think about that before you knock somebody up.
Yeah. And then, people are living longer. So are there not grandparents and great grandparents and
part of the problem with daycare often is over-regulation, in the sense that used to be, and it works like this for lots of folks, where one lady will stay home, a grandmother or a neighbor or a babysitter or somebody where it's a good fit for them to stay home, and they'll take care of 3 or 4 kids.
Yeah.
It's kind of the private sector working.
God forbid someone had a small business where the government could have a monopoly.
Yeah. And, but, there are these instances, there's some daycare centers that might not be where you and I want to send our children, but it allows people to go out there and work. And the government effectively closes them down because of various violations of regulations that, many of which are just unnecessary at all to have.
Yeah, and it's not like that's a perfect industry either. I've seen lots of horrific articles.
You can walk into anybody's home that has kids at 3:00 in the afternoon, and you could probably find the same type of violations.
But there's so many of these big businesses also do like Head Start programs like Virginia
You want to
Commonwealth.
attract the employees, you do things like that. That's what a competitive marketplace does.
Yeah, and so there's so many Head Start programs. The public schools do aftercare programs using like the YMCA. I mean, to act like there are no daycares is kind of just a ridiculous.
Let the economy prosper and you'll have more and more choices.
Yeah.
Loading it down with debt and regulation and you won't have any choices.
Yeah.
We don't need you, government. Go away. Get out of our lives. We can take care of this ourselves. Eat me and fuck off.
That's a good note to end on. I like
Okay.
Right on.
All right, Stu, I'm gonna go to the rally here.
I say hi to Don Juan for me.
I will. And Bill O'Reilly's there as well.
But he's not Don Juan.
Right. Okay. All right.
Later.
See ya.
They used to write nothing about me. Now I average probably about 4 or 5 stories a day on the front page. Someday they're going to give me a good one. Watch. It might be tomorrow.